Hello there, and welcome to Jacque's podcast. I'm still playing with some names, but eventually it's probably going to settle on Jacque R.E.A.H, recreation, environment, art and culture, civic engagement, health and nutrition. And under each one of those, I like to manage projects, develop things, partner with others, just so that we can work together to build a better community for everyone. Under C, civic engagement, is where I like to kind of right now categorize the faith work that I do. I'm very active in mass incarceration and social justice movements, but I worship at a church, Westminster Presbyterian Church, that is very active in the city of Trenton and beyond. And our mission is to seek the shalom, or the peace of the city. And to do that, you got to be involved in the city. You've got to know what's going on in the city. You've got to be connected to what's happening in the city. And you also have to be connected to other entities and other partners that can assist with getting the work done that you feel called to do. One of those partners that we have, excuse me, at Westminster Presbyterian Church is Princeton Theological Seminary, often referred to as the seminary or some other acronym. But Princeton Theological Seminary has a wonderful relationship with many in the faith community. But we've got one of their grad students who is serving as an intern at Westminster. I'm going to be bringing Emily Z on now. And Emily, I want to say we've been able to connect in virtually for interviews more than once in a very short amount of time. So I kind of feel like you and I might be working in the same studio or something like that. How are you today?
Doing well.
That's awesome. Well, I'd like for you to give us a elevator pitch or speech about an introduction as to who Emily Z is, where you're from, and what led you to come to the seminary, Princeton Theological Seminary.
Okay. Hi, yeah, I'm Emily. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. And although weirdly, I was born in New Jersey, my parents were actually church planters. They lived in Woodbury for about a decade. Wow. And so started a church that I think the church is now merged with another church, as happens, churches grow and change. But yeah, so I was technically born in Jersey, but grew up in Texas, and my whole family has been Texan for generations. So still very much a Texan. But yeah, I had a winding route to seminary. I think I mean, like, as you've heard, like my family I grew up very in the church. But the church I was in was the Church of Christ, which I don't know, there's not as much of that up here. Usually when I say that up here, people think, oh, UCC? And it's like, no, no, Church of Christ.
And you know what, I'm glad you said that, because even though First Baptist, like every town's got like a First Baptist or whatever, oftentimes they're not affiliated. And I think that for folks who are not involved in, church so much, I can see it being a little confusing. So thanks for the clarification about the Church of Christ.
Yeah, because the Church of Christ is very conservative. And I mean, like theologically conservative. The way that you can tell a Church of Christ is that if you go to worship and there's no instrumentation ever, everything is a cappella. And they have a weird, supposedly theological reason for that. A lot of churches, it's tradition now, but they, yeah, it's a weird little tradition. But it's also not affirming of women leadership. So,
well, so let's talk about that too, because the affirmation of women in leadership has been a big thing for a very long time. And I know that we're still seeing it. So again, folks, those locally who are affiliated with the Church of Christ, Emily is speaking specifically to the Church of Christ that she was affiliated with, or they were affiliated with in Houston, Texas. So make sure we have that clear. So when we talk about the non-affirming to women to preach, can you just talk about how different that is here? Because I believe it may be not as much here on the East Coast, but again, I'm not a not a pastor in that. So can you just tell me what it's like in comparison to Texas and say New Jersey?
Yeah, I mean, again, like there are churches in Texas that affirm women leadership. It kind of connects to denomination. Church of Christ and some of the Baptist denominations tend toward not affirming. And then, PCUSA or the UCC or things like that, those churches in Texas are affirming. Yeah, so it kind of depends. But I guess growing up in that, it was, and I grew up in a church where it was not affirmed, but they didn't talk about it from the pulpit. Mm-hmm. It was just kind of silent sidelining is what
all right. So like, Sarah, you're blowing my mind here. I hope I can get through this in 30 minutes. Can you tell me that term again?
Silent sidelining.
Yeah. Can you explain it?
Yeah. So, I mean, from even my own experience, it meant that by the time I hit puberty, suddenly, because I'd always been someone who would, volunteer a lot. I was super involved in the church. I would pray. I would, and as a little kid, they let you go up there because it's cute. And then suddenly, once you're, I guess, a woman, whatever that means, whatever they draw the line, suddenly they stop asking. And suddenly you raise your hand and they just don't see you. And, or if you do ask, they kind of come up with some reason, oh, not right now. And if you push, they'll tell you why not. And sometimes, like when I was younger, there was kind of it was a push and tug, but particularly when it came to like the pulpit, like standing in front of the church, that was protected, and that women were not allowed there in a leadership capacity. Weirdly, we had a female children's minister. Well, actually, she couldn't be a minister. She was a director of children's ministry because you don't hire women ministers within that context. It was some bizarre legalistic.
Well, I want to detour a bit and give you kudos and respect for sticking to faith, because I could see that could easily drive a lot of folks away, from the relationship with God, because of some reason someone decided that you fit a group that should not be allowed to partake.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest, it did drive me away like that. I'm back, but it wasn't, I didn't just stay connected the whole time, I mean, I'll say this. It drove me away from parts of the church. I got very angry at the church. I think I got disconnected with God from other reasons. Like that was a part of it, but that had to do with like grief. But yeah, I think, I mean, it's really hard, I think, when you are, particularly within like the Christian context, we relate to God individually, but we also, like, God is embodied like in the church, in our relationships with one another. And when your experience of those relationships is tainted like that, I mean, like it for me, it made like God a thing that like I can connect with God individually, but like God in the church or God in relationship, like I don't know about that. And I think, I mean, like as I've kind of come back to church and like discovered the power in relationship, the way that God is revealed uniquely in the body of Christ, like I was missing so much, but it was so hard to open myself to that connection because it had been so wounding when I was young.
I'm so glad that I've got a chance to meet you. I want to hear so much more about that, because we think about how many people have bad experiences and how those bad experiences lead to certain choices, certain lifestyles, and the impact that has not only on them, but also on society as a whole. And to hear that it hasn't totally pushed you away from seeking that type of spiritual growth, that to me feels good. And that says a lot to me about your character. So thank you for sticking with it, even though everything hell, so to speak, is going on around you. Internally, you are in a space where you could focus. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to get down with you a little bit more and get to go into those conversations a little bit deeper. But so coming to seminary, like you're an adult, you've done these different things, you've had life experiences, but I want to go to seminary. Like, how does that happen, and what does that like consist of?
Oh, that consists of a lot of inner work. I mean, for me, because I was not really in the church for a while. I was Buddhist. I was going a totally different direction. I mean, it started with a relationship falling apart, something that I think I was, we were living together. Was kind of where I thought my life was going. And for a lot of reasons, it was like codependency, but like, figured out that wasn't like the way that my life could go. And suddenly, I'm out of the house that we shared. I've got nowhere to be. I'm, trying to figure out what is going to give my life meaning, because I've always been, I mean, like, and I think that's the thing that like kept me tied to faith and the church, is that like these questions that God puts in us, like they don't leave us alone, or at least they didn't leave me alone.
Hallelujah.
Like yeah, like you just can't. So I mean, like I actually had thought about going to seminary after undergrad, and then kind of decided, no, I don't think I trust the church enough to do that. And so I went and got a job in the corporate world. I was working in tech, but I was just, I mean, like, on the one hand, I did my job, and on the other hand, in my personal life, it was just like existential crises, one after the other. Because those questions, that like, what really does matter? Is my life amounting to anything? And that sense of like needing relationship. I mean, I think we find ourselves most in that intimate connection, which is like the body of Christ, right? And you don't find that intimate connection in just like the working world, or in the economy, or in, like all of these others kind of like simpler relationships. Like they're just, it doesn't feed, because it doesn't acknowledge the fact that we're bound to one another in this deep way. And I kept looking for that, and there just wasn't a space for it outside of like faith.
I'd like to use the term satisfying my soul when I'm doing these things, and people are like, well, why are you doing it? Like it doesn't fit, it doesn't make any sense. And I kind of think that resonated with what you were just describing. Like, no matter what was going on, there was something that was inside of you, something that was it's just there. And it's real, you feel it, you can communicate with it at times, it's there. Oh, wow. Why Princeton?
Well, I mean, partially because when I was finally getting around to thinking about, and I took a break between, I quit my corporate job finally after this breakup, and I decided to do a year of service in Durham, North Carolina with the Episcopal Service Corps, kind of, again, just trying to figure out, and actually okay, this is why it's hard, because there's too many pieces of the story and they're not linear in my brain. But I also
so we can bypass those, and let's just jump. Let's just jump right to Princeton and tie in the local portion.
Yeah. So Princeton, I mean, it was kind of the middle ground I was looking for. Like when I was going through the like looking for schools piece, I was originally thinking I was going to go to div school. So the difference, if people don't know, the difference between divinity school and seminary is that divinity schools are like attached to a secular university. So you've got like Yale Divinity School, Harvard Divinity School, Duke Divinity School, whereas seminaries are like separate institutions. So a seminary is not tied to a secular university. It's just like a space to train religious leaders. And so I thought I was going to go the divinity school route because my own religious background was kind of varied. And seminaries tend to be more, I mean, like if you're at a Christian seminary, it's going to just be Christian. And there's a part of me that still, is very tied to and fascinated by like Buddhist philosophy and yogic philosophy and how that kind of, I mean, for me, I think they connect, but I thought that was a thing that I wanted to study like as part of my formation.
Okay.
But what I realized as I like visited these campuses and talked about the programs and things like that was that I realized that I guess I think there are a lot of different paths. And I think the tendency in like American society, and I guess like Western society more broadly, is to just kind of like pick and choose and, make it for yourself. And like, and on the one hand, like I've done that, like I do that. Like I can't, and I think there's wisdom everywhere, and it's good to learn it, and it's powerful to learn it. But I felt like if I was going to spend 4 years focused on a particular kind of spiritual growth and formation, I wanted to just do it within one tradition. Because I felt like that was, I think, I don't know, at least from my experience, like different spiritual paths, they all lead to, it's like, I think sometimes we think that like, oh, they're all just going up the same mountain, so you just do whatever. But it's like, I think there are different mountains. I just think like God's like world is bigger than that. And so if you're trying to like hike up 4 different mountains at the same time, you're not going to get as far, right?
I think that's a good analogy. I think that's one that I think more people will be able to identify with, because a majority of the folks in this area, and I'm talking about this Trenton region, so to speak, where I've been born, raised, etc. There's a lot of folks who have been grown up Catholic and worshiped Catholic, and even if it was in the sense of going to a Catholic school, even if Catholicism was not, the religion. I think that there's many people who may not be seeking any faith because of an experience they had with a particular denomination or a particular person in a particular denomination. And it may have, again, done some things with where they are with their relationship with God. And I think it's good to know that there are a lot of folks, probably more who don't think this way, who want to come back to the faith and say, hey, look, okay, so-and-so made a mistake or so-and-so was an error. That's not really the sum of everything. So that's pretty awesome. Thank you for that. You've given me a lot of clarity. When, as an intern, when you come and you worship at a church, like let's just say as Westminster, I mean, you come in and you have expectations and you have ideas, and I'm sure you're prepared and you're trained and prayed up for it. I'd like for you to talk about what your experience has been like at Westminster, and in the way that worshiping here in, say, New Jersey or Trenton, or in, at Westminster in general.
So what has my experience been coming to this, to this space? I mean, I guess I'm just thinking like the first time I came to Westminster, it was such a breath of fresh air. Particularly because like, I guess like having been, kind of before, because in seminary, on the one hand, you get like so much like church that you kind of get tired of. Like you're going to chapel every single day, and it's, but it's a particular kind of church, because it's formed, or it's shaped by kind of the institution and by its norms. And I mean, and honestly, it's like by white norms. And it starts to feel insular. And in like in a weird, like on the one hand, like there's there's a beautiful diversity in the chapel services that like are planned, but at the same time, if like the whole like body of Christ isn't there in the church and the diversity of the body of Christ isn't in the church, like it can't, you feel the part that's missing, you know? And so going to Westminster, it felt like the some of the pieces that, I mean, like, you know, because like no church is like the whole body, right? But like there were pieces there that I hadn't been connected with, I mean, really since I was like back in Houston. And so, because, yeah, so I mean, it really, and then I think like settling into like the intern role has been interesting because I don't know, it's like it's kind of it's kind of a weird liminal space, you know, like I know how to be a member of a church and I know how to like really commit and like, but like be someone who's just like a part of the group. And I feel like as an intern, like I'm not quite a member, like I want to be a member, but I'm not a member because I'm also a servant of a church. And also like, I mean, I don't feel like I'm a leader in any real sense, but like kind of in the sense of like, I don't, there's like the thing about the distinction between like the pastor and the church members is that like the pastor is a little bit set apart. Like no matter whether you want to be together, like there is a difference in like being the one who was set apart as leader and being the church member. And honestly, you know, that's part of the reason I've never really wanted to be a pastor, because I like a separate pastor, you know, I've always wanted to be like a lay person because like I want to be one of the flock. And I'm happy to lead from that space, like in the midst, but that separation has always been like a difficult thing for me. So I feel like in the internship position, I feel like there is some of that, like, it's like the beginnings of separation, because again, we're trying, the idea is that, you know, a lot of these are created to form you for leadership. But so it's been a weird line, honestly. Like it's been kind of a because
yeah. So I'm glad that if it was a complex like question and a more complex answer, because you know, as I said, one of the things that Westminster has adopted is seeking the shalom of the city. And when you do that and you say that, you don't have control over who is in the city.
No.
Means you've got to be open to whomever comes to you. You know, I often personally talk about the book of Revelation when it says that we're going to be worshiping, you know, in a number that can't be counted of all different backgrounds and languages. So if that's the case, man, why shouldn't I just kind of like that be my lifestyle now? Am I all of a sudden, of course, I'm going to be perfect, you know, as it's been taught, but does that mean that all of a sudden I should just be okay with everything and not be okay with it now? I don't know, but hopefully, you know, in the rest of the time that I have here, I'll be able to continue to grow and get some more knowledge and understanding about that and be able to share it with others. What I'd like for you to do now, Z, is I'd like for you to share about where you anticipate you're going. And I know that it's difficult for seminary students because there's so much work and the way the leadership is structured. And I hate to say it like this, but they beat you guys down. They beat you guys down. And, you know, I think that I want to hear you kind of speak it into existence so I can at least take some of that and then, you know, share it on my side.
Yeah, I mean, this has been like the question, right? Since I got to seminary. And the funny thing is, you know, the way that things are turning out, I think I'm staying here for at least another like decade. Like that's, and that, I mean, because, you know, and partially it's actually because of Stan, my partner. Because he only, you know, got to do high school, he was homeschooled. And he's never gotten to like pursue any kind of like degree. So he's just been working labor jobs and things like that. And he's thinking, you know, we have residency here, finally has some support and like wants to still be working, but like go for a degree. And so if you're working full time and trying to get a degree, that takes like 8-10 years, right? Which means my calling is going to be here.
Oh, man.
Which means I'm trying to figure out what the hell that looks like.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, here's what I want to do, right? I want to make sure that you know that you have access. You've got partners, you've got folks around here that are in our networks that are looking to do wonderful things, to really, come around and surround and engage and help edify and lift up. Oftentimes I tell Pastor Karen, like with Moses and Aaron, that team that's around you to hold your arms up when you can't, all those different things. I believe that that is our calling, truly as our calling, which is why I speak oftentimes about love thy neighbor as thyself. And I want you to know that you've got a space here. Whatever you need, what I can do to assist you, let's get this going. Because the knights in shining armor running down the city on horseback, that's us. That's us. We just got to learn how to ride some horses and get the shining armor. But that is us. In closing, just next couple of minutes, I'd like for you to just reach out and speak to two different groups. One, the parents of young people and like they're involved in the church, and then to the young people, the children, the youth, who are in the church, they kind of dig it, but they're still trying to figure things out, trying to find their way. Can you just maybe share a couple of words to both of those groups?
Okay. I mean, I think what I needed to hear at that time was that and this is not true for everyone, but particularly because I grew up in a space where I felt like my voice was kind of silenced, and I think I didn't trust that the voice was there. There is a voice in you, the Spirit is speaking in you, and you can trust that. I think it's so easy, particularly when you're told that, and you don't. I mean, there's a lot of things you don't understand when you're young, right? That we're growing, we need help and wisdom, but also there is the Spirit within you, and your passions aren't just from nowhere. You may not know how it turns out. Wisdom may help you follow it in a way that's going to be more healthy for you ultimately, but yeah, God is inside of you and God is speaking to you, and you can trust that.
Fantastic. All right, now to the parents who may, or the guardians, for them, you've got some young people in your building, in your midst, and they're excited. What would you like to share with them?
I think the thing that's coming to my mind is something about trust. I mean, I think it's kind of the opposite side of if for young people it's the Spirit is speaking in you, but for adults it is trust that God is speaking to your kids, and God will be with them. I mean, I think so much of depending on the kind of parent and how they deal with the stress of being responsible for another person, right? It's hard sometimes to give up that control, or that sense that if things, and I'm thinking particularly about young adults, right? Kids need more, but with young adults, God is with them and God is watching out for them. And so, and I mean, and I know for me, I made some dumb decisions and God was with me, and my parents couldn't have been with me at that time, but that was when I found God myself. And so that wherever your kid is, or however scary it seems, they are not alone. And sometimes when they when you're afraid that they're the most alone, that might be when they're finding God.
Wow, I think that's a perfect way to finish up. Emily Z, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to spending more time worshiping, getting to know you, and I'm very excited to know that you and Sam will be here for at least another decade. Lord willing. All right. Well, thank you so much, Z, and we'll be in touch in the near future. Thank you again. All right.
Thanks.
And there you have it, folks. You got a chance to meet Emily Z, referred to as they, them, Princeton Theological Seminary, grad student, so to speak, worshiping at Westminster, finding out what God wants them to do. And they're here, and they want to be here. Let's bring more of them here, and let's edify more of them. Jacque Howard here, reminding you it's always about justice, peace, and humility.